Hello, this is Dr. Jambitsky and welcome to my environmental science screencast. Today we are going to discuss the book by John Muir, The Mountains of California. Hello, and welcome back to our discussion on the history of environmental movement. Today we will continue talking about John Muir. As you remember, the most bitter disappointment of Muir's life was his failure to prevent the flooding and submersion of the Hetch Hetch Valley in Yosemite National Park by a dam built to supply water and electricity to San Francisco. So Muir focuses on Hetch Hetch Valley in his book, The Mountains of California, that was first published in early 1900s. So the whole idea was to convey to American people how beautiful this area was, and it was unthinkable to ruin it by commercial project. And right now we are looking at the historical photograph of part of the national park. In particular, we are looking at Hetch Hetch Valley. What we can see here is a beautiful valley. At the bottom of the valley there is a Tuolumne River flowing freely. We see some vegetation, trees around the banks of the river. We also observe beautiful granite walls of the valley and very beautiful waterfalls. One over here and one over here in a very close proximity. Absolutely scenic view. And these are the Wapama Falls and the Tuilala Falls. You can imagine when John Muir arrived to Hetch Hetch Valley, he was thrilled by this scenic beauty. And obviously, he fell in love with the area, and he called this area the most precious nature temple. So what we see here, this beautiful valley in the photograph, right now is flooded, and there is a huge artificial lake that covers all this ground, and the only way how you can observe the beautiful waterfalls if only you take a helicopter ride, because you cannot approach these waterfalls. There are granite walls here and on the opposite side, and all the land area in between is submerged under the water. I would like to introduce you to John Muir's inspirational writing, and this is a historic book, The Mountains of California. So this particular book, which is available online in the digital format, is from Cornell University Library. And so it's digitalized, and we have an ability to flip the pages electronically. Obviously, it is a historic rarity. So what I would like to do, I would like to introduce you to some passages from this book, and when we read about certain landmark described in the book, I would like you to see what it is. So let's flip few pages here so we have an idea about the book. Okay, so I'm gonna open it up. We can see that this book was acquired by Cornell University's library in 1800s, so it is quite old. The Mountains of California. The Mountains of California by John Muir, published in New York by the Century Company. There are very beautiful illustrations. They are black and white. And if we continue, we will see the table of content. And there is also a list of illustrations. Some of those illustrations are pictures produced by John Muir by itself, and some are photographs that he edited. So, for example, let's find some familiar photograph and let's take a look. So, for example, right now we are looking at chapter 6, which dedicated to the glacial lakes. And if you start flipping pages here, for example, here is a drawing of Tenaya Lake, one of beautiful lakes that we can find in Sierra Nevada area. Okay, so obviously very beautiful drawings that we can observe here. They are black and white and quite impressive. So here's a picture of another lake, Lake Starkine, also very beautiful. So if you click and flip pages, we will find more beautiful illustrations. For example, this is a view of Sierra Forest, ancient sequoia trees. So here we have view of the mountains with some vegetation. All right, different species of pine trees illustrated by John Muir, such as the nut pine over here. This is a different species of pine trees, such as sugar pine, for example. Beautiful, beautiful illustrations. So altogether we have over 400 pages in this textbook. If somebody is really interested and would like to read this book or listen to this book, because it's available as an audiobook from the Library of the United States Congress, so you can just Google the website of the library, and there is a free audiobook there. Obviously, in more contemporary time, now here's description of creatures that inhabit this area, and what I was saying, that obviously nowadays we have more advanced technology, and we have digital photographs of the area. And because of the time constraints, obviously in class we will not be able to read all 400 pages, but I would like to read with you some important passages from this book so we can appreciate both the poetic language of John Muir and his advocacy to protect part of the national park. When we will read the passages from this book, I also would like you to kind of think about John Muir's writing and writing by George Perkins Marsh, because the style is very, very different. So John Muir's writing is a lot more poetic, it's a lot more descriptive. It's pretty much like music scribed into the words, passages, and paragraphs. And I hope you can appreciate the language of the mountains of California. So here we go. Let's start reading.
Key concept: the primacy of nature and the case for wilderness preservation/Osmite is so wonderful that we are apt to regard it LJ as an exceptional Kriya, the only valley of its kind, the world, but nature is not so poor as to have only one of anything. Several other Yosemites have been discovered in the Sierra that occupy the same relative positions on the range and were formed by the same forces in the same kind of granite. One of these, the Hetch Hetchy Valley, is in the Yosemite National Park, about 20 miles from Yosemite, and is easily accessible to all sorts of travelers by a road and trail that leaves the Big Oak Flat Road at Bronson Meadows a few miles below Crane Flat, and to mountaineers by way of Yosemite Creek Basin and the...
Alright, so let's talk about this paragraph. So first of all, as you can see here, John Muir writes that nature is very creative, and it never has one of anything. So if you look inside of Yosemite National Park, there are two sister valleys, which are different, but also very similar. The Hetch Hetch Valley is actually a counterpart of a larger valley of Yosemite Valley, and so both valleys are glorious. Both of them are part of the national park. Both of them can be enjoyed by visitors, and John Muir would like to save the Hetch Hetch Valley from being flooded by the commercial project. Okay, so we are looking at the North American, so California is right here, and this is where the Yosemite National Park would be located. So how we can get to Hetch Hetch Valley, how we can get to Yosemite National Park, and let's think in terms of John Muir and the description that he gives us in the book. So we are supposed to follow the Big Oak Flat Road at Bronson Meadows, and that would be one easy access to Hetch Hetch Valley. So let's see where it is. So we are going to travel to our first stop, which is Crane Flat Campground. Right, so at present time, this is actually a camping site, and you can see there is a road right here. So this area is accessible by cars. Here's a Crane Creek. This is the area over here. So Crane Flat Campground, located in Yosemite National Park, 17 miles northwest of Yosemite Valley, right? And that's exactly what John Muir's writing tells us. And if you look at the map, we can see that there is some major road over here, and I don't know if Highway 120 existed in John Muir's time, but he is describing Big Oak Flat Road over here. So now we can go back to our view. And if we actually zoom out a little bit, so we will see the Yosemite Visitor Center over here, and over here is the Hetch Hetch Valley, and this is the Yosemite Valley. And we can also measure the distance between the Crane Flat campground and, let's see, for example, the visitor center. Okay, so I have my measuring tool ready. So this is Crane Flat campground. So this is Yosemite Valley Visitor Center over here. So I'm gonna use my virtual ruler. That's my point number 1. And approximately here is the point number 2. So it's like 18.59 kilometers. And if I would like to convert it to miles, so in miles it's about 11.5 miles. Right, so that's reasonably close. Reasonably close. Alright, that was the first landmark here, and the second landmark is Yosemite Creek Basin. And what we can do here, we can go to another tourist spot. We can go to Yosemite Creek Basin picnic area. Okay, so here we are. Yosemite Basin picnic area. We see Yosemite Creek right there. This is close to some type of a road. And if we move over here, we will see there is some areas you can park a car. We can even drop our little person over here to this road and see what this area look like. Right, so quite reasonable development, right? So we can two-way road, so it should be relatively easy to get here, as John Muir told us. We can also take a look at the map over here. Yeah, this is a road right here. There is a picture of the area. Very beautiful, very scenic outlook. Beautiful ancient trees. Very nice digital photographs. And look at this ancient sequoia tree. This tree is hundreds years old. Beautiful flowers. And this is somebody's car. It's beautiful skies. So Yosemite Creek area is another area which is accessible to visit, and this is how John Muir recommends to get to Hetch Hetch Valley, another option. And so let's try to zoom out a little bit more here. And on the left side there is Yosemite Valley and Hetch Hetch Valley. So this is a Crane Flat campground that we visited before. Right here. And this is Yosemite Creek picnic area right here. Alrighty, once again, I would like to measure the distance between Yosemite Creek Picnic Area and Yosemite National Park Visitor Center. Obviously, we probably won't be able to walk in a straight line because we are moving between mountains, but just to have a rough idea. Okay, so this is my first point, and Yosemite Visitor Center is somewhere over here. So it's look like this is about 7 miles, right? This is 7 mile distance, even closer than the first option. Okay, so let's continue reading.
The Tuolumne. It is said to have been discovered by Joseph Screech, a hunter, in 1850. A years before the discovery of the Great Yosemite. After my first visit to it in the autumn of 1871, I have always called it the Tuolumne Yosemite, for it is a wonderfully exact counterpart of the Merced Yosemite, not only in its sublime rocks and waterfalls but in the gardens, groves, and meadows of its flowery park-like floor. The floor of Yosemite is about 4,000 feet above the sea, the Hetch Hetchy floor about 3,700 feet. And as the Merced River flows through Yosemite, so does the Tuolumne through Hetch Hetchy. The walls of both are of gray granite, rise abruptly from the floor, are sculptured in the same style, and in both every rock is a glacier monument.
Very well, let's discuss this paragraph. So what John Muir is talking about here, we have two valleys, the Yosemite Valley, which is the larger valley, and the Hetch Hetchy Valley, which is a smaller valley. And both valleys are amazingly beautiful. So both of them have granite walls. So if you look at the floor of Yosemite Valley, it's about 4,000 feet above the sea. Hetch Hetchy floor is about 3,700 feet, so it's not as highly elevated, a little bit less elevated. There are two rivers flowing through the valleys. So the Merced River or Merced River flows through the Yosemite Valley. And we have a sister valley, Hetch Hetchy Valley, that also has a river which is called Tuolumne River that flows through Hetch Hetchy Valley. The names of the rivers comes from the Indian language. So very distinctly, we have these granite walls that rise abruptly from the floor of the valleys, and those walls are made of granite. And so every rock is a glacier monument. So remember, we have already discussed the glacial theory of Yosemite and Hetch Hetchy Valley Formation by John Muir, and this is what he means when he writes, every rock is a glacier monument. So if you missed it, I recommend to watch again our prior screencast. So for comparative purposes, the Yosemite Valley is going to be called by John Muir the Merced Yosemite because of the Merced River that flows there. And the Hetch Hetchy Valley will be called the Tuolumne Yosemite because of the Tuolumne River that flows there. Okay, so we are back to our map. And we would like to find the Merced River and the Tuolumne River. So Merced River is our next stop. This river originates inside of Yosemite National Park, but then it actually flows in the direction of the ocean. It doesn't reach the ocean because it merges with a larger river. But in this view, we can actually appreciate where Hetch Hetchy Valley and Yosemite Valley are. And we can see here the coastline and the coastal cities, such as, for example, the city of San Francisco, that was thirsty for water at that time. Here's a picture of Merced River. Okay, so the river, which is approximately 145 miles long, and so eventually it merges with a larger river, San Joaquin, and we can actually look at the wonderful pictures of the river. So we have some idea of the turbulence and purity of the water, and obviously this part of the river is in the national park, which is shown over here. So different areas of the river. Back to the original view, to our map view. Okay. So this is our Merced River that flows through Yosemite Valley. And now let's find our Tuolumne River that flows through Hetch Hetchy Valley, and this is a river that sadly was dammed by the city of San Francisco. This is going to be our next stop, Tuolumne River. Oops, that's Yosemite Visitor Center. Okay. Well, I think I stage this in this order for a reason. So let's actually take a look at Yosemite Visitor Center that we discussed earlier. And let's see what we can see here. Okay, so this is a Merced River, right? Remember, Merced River flows through the Yosemite Valley right here. Okay, now I get it why I staged it this way, because I wanted to show you the proximity of the Merced River that right inside of the national park. Okay, so the next stop, we are flying to our next stop, is Hetch Hetchy Reservoir. And so why I didn't really show you the river yet, because I want you to look at the flooded value at the flooded Hetch Hetchy Valley first. Right, so this body of water is an artificial lake. And so it is here because the Tuolumne River has been dammed, and so here's a Shaughnessy Dam right here. And so this river is our Tuolumne River, and it is pretty much fed by the melting snow caps and melting glaciers. It has pristine, pure water. And so it starts in the mountains of California, and then it flows through Hetch Hetchy Valley, which is flooded right here. So up to this point over here, this is our Tuolumne River. Okay, I think it just blinked the name of the river. So this is our Tuolumne River. Tuolumne River coming from the glaciers. Right, so you have some idea. This is artificial lake. This is the dam. and the entire valley is under the water. And now the river continues. And similar to the Merced River, the Tuolumne River will merge with a larger river later. So let's travel to the next stop, where I actually mark the Tuolumne River for you. And this particular landmark is outside of the national park. It's right here because river kind of flows out of the national park. And once again, we will be able to see the coastline here and the city of San Francisco. So Palo Alto is a suburb of San Francisco. Here's the city of San Francisco. And so here we go. We can also look at the information. The river is approximately 149 miles long. And again, it joins San Joaquin River, similar to the Merced River. There are some images of this river. Again, very nice scenery. Those pictures taken by different people. We're back to this screen, and I'm gonna kind of go back to the regional waypoint so we can see the river. And another thing that I wanted to show you, that there is another dam there, and there is another artificial lake which is called Don Pedro Reservoir, which is not in the national park. It's outside of the national park. And so all that water that flows from the artificial lake inside of the national park will eventually come to Don Pedro Reservoir. And so here's the Tuolumne River landmark, right? It continues in this direction, and this is Don Pedro. Which is also an artificial lake that theoretically could store the water instead of that artificial lake in the national park. Right, so quite substantial size Don Pedro Reservoir. So let's actually fly to Don Pedro Reservoir so we can see it. Okay, it's right there. So we can zoom in if you want. And there's information here on this artificial lake as well, and there's a picture. It's actually huge. And this is where the water from Hetch Hetchy Valley comes anyway later. And the reason I'm showing you Don Pedro Reservoir, because we are going to have a discussion about restoration of Hetch Hetchy Valley, and scientists actually suggested to store water outside of the national park with some engineering solutions. So instead of keep water in the national park, to take it out and store it, for example, here in Don Pedro's Reservoir. Now, if we continue reading, John Moore's writing here Standing boldly out of the south wall is a strikingly picturesque rock called by Indians Kalana, the outmost of the group of 2,300 feet high. Okay, so we have this interesting rock formation, which is called by Indians Kalana. And John Muir compares Kalana to the Cathedral Rocks of Yosemite Valley. So there is a direct comparison between the two valleys. The Kalana is a counterpart of the Cathedral Rocks. So if we look across Hetch Hetchy Valley, according to John Muir, on the opposite side of the valley, we will also see another rock which is facing Kalana, and this rock is similar to rock formation of the larger Yosemite Valley, which is called El Capitan, right? Both of them are similar in their position and also in their shape and in their grace and their beauty. So let's take a look at Kalana, the Cathedral Rocks of Yosemite, El Capitan, so you have some understanding what John Muir is describing in his book. From Don Pedro's Reservoir, we are going to travel back to our Hetch Hetchy Valley. And we are going to look at Kalana Rock. It's right there. You can see the marker. And if I turn to the 3D view, you can think how impressive this rock formation is, Kalana. And obviously there is the opposite wall of the valley and another rock formation, which is Hetch Hetchy Dome right here. And all the area between the two walls, wall to wall, everything is flooded. So there is no river. This is just an artificial lake at this particular spot. So let's take a look at some pictures of Kalana. Right, Kalana is a prominent granite dome located along the southern edge of Hetch Hetchy Valley in Yosemite National Park. John Muir stated that Kalana was the Indian name for the rock. So it elevates itself approximately 2,000 feet above the Hetch Hetchy Reservoir. And it is across from Hetch Hetchy Dome, and this is also something that John Muir wrote about. So this is a picture of Kalana, and this is artificial lake. There's another view. And as you can imagine, there is no way you can walk across this valley because it's flooded. This is another view of Kalana over here. So we are back to our view of Hetch Hetchy Reservoir, and we have a Kalana Rock and the Hetch Hetchy Dome on the opposite side. Right here. So this is our Hetch Hetchy Dome, another impressive rock formation described by John Muir. Hetch Hetchy Dome is a granite dome in Hetch Hetchy area of Yosemite National Park. Right, so Kalana and Hetch Hetchy Dome right across one another. And remember that John Muir description is comparing Hetch Hetchy Dome to another rock inside of Yosemite Valley, El Capitan. So let's fly from here from Hetch Hetchy Valley, from the flooded Hetch Hetchy Valley to the Yosemite Valley to see El Capitan. Okay, right there, quite impressive rock formation, El Capitan. Let's enjoy the scenic three-dimensional view. You can see Merced River flowing at the flow of the valley. This valley is not flooded and can be visited by tourists. Alright, so here we are like standing at the top of El Capitan. I wonder if I maybe can stand right here at the observation point. Alright, and it's look like tourists here can enjoy the spectacular view of the valley. This is the opposite side. The valley is gonna be this way. Right, so this look like an observation point at top of El Capitan. El Capitan, also known as El Cap, is a vertical rock formation in Yosemite National Park located on the north side of Yosemite Valley near its west end. It's approximately 3,000 feet from the base of the valley. And let's take a look at the picture. Very beautiful. El Capitan. Another picture. Obviously, these are pictures posted here by different people, right? So different seasons, so we can appreciate the scenic beauty of Yosemite Valley. And this is a beautiful night picture of El Capitan. Alright, so we will continue reading passages from the mountains of California, and next John Muir is gonna give us very poetic description of the waterfalls in the Hetch Hetchy Valley, and he will start with the first waterfall, which is called in Indian Tulalip Falls. So let's listen to John Muir's poetic description of Tulalip Falls.
I have ever seen. From the edge of the cliff to the top of an earthquake talus, it is perfectly free in the air for 1,000 feet before it is broken into cascades among talus boulders. It is in all its glory in June, when the snow is melting fast, but fades and vanishes toward the end of summer. The only fall I know with which it may fairly be compared is the Yosemite Bridal Veil, but it excels even that favorite fall both in height and airy-fairy beauty and behavior. Lowlanders are apt to suppose that mountain streams in their wild career over cliffs lose control of themselves and tumble in a noisy chaos of mist and spray. On the contrary, on no part of their travels are they more harmonious and self-controlled. Imagine yourself in Hetch Hetchy on a sunny day in June, standing waist-deep in grass and flowers, as I have often stood, while the great pines sway dreamily with scarcely perceptible motion. Looking northward across the valley you see a plain, gray granite cliff rising abruptly out of the gardens and groves to a height of 1,800 feet, and in front of it Tolala's silvery scarf burning with irised sunfire. In the first white outburst at the head there is abundance of visible energy, but it is speedily hushed and concealed in divine repose, and its tranquil progress to the base of the cliff is like that of a downy feather in a still room. Now observe the fineness and marvelous distinctness of the various sun-illumined fabrics into which the water is woven. They sift and float from form to form down the face of that grand grey rock in so leisurely and unconfused a manner that you can examine their texture, and patterns, and tones of color as you would a piece of embroidery held in the hand. Toward the top of the fall you see groups of booming, comet-like masses, their solid, white heads separate, their tails like combed silk interlacing among delicate gray and purple shadows, ever forming and dissolving, worn out by friction in their rush through the air. Most of these vanish a few hundred feet below the summit, changing to varied forms of cloud-like drapery. Near the bottom the width of the fall has increased from about 25 feet to 100 feet. Here it is composed of yet finer tissues, and is still without a trace of disorder, air, water, and sunlight woven into stuff that spirits might wear.
So what do we have in this paragraph? So as I already mentioned, we have a very poetic description of Hetch Hetch waterfall, which is called Tulalala. Tulalala waterfall is compared here very poetically to a silvery scarf, which is also burning with iris sunfire, and this is obviously a description of a reflection of the sun rays in the water. So pretty much if you see, John Muir tells us, imagine you are standing at the floor of the valley and observing this magnificent Tulalala waterfall, right? Unfortunately, we cannot do this. We cannot stand at the floor of the valley. We can only imagine it now because the valley was flooded. Again, he is observing this tranquil state of nature. He is observing this divine repose. So the fineness and marvelous of the water, and he is comparing the waterfall to the sun-illuminated fabrics. So the water is woven into sun-illuminated fabrics, and those are magical fabrics. So water and sunlight are blended together into the fabrics that only spirits can wear. So it's very beautiful and very poetic description, comparison of the waterfall to the cloud-like drapery with magical properties. So very, very, very impressive, and it makes you want to go stand at that spot where John Muir used to stand, right, and observe the magical movement of water and listen to the magical sound of water, right, if we could only do this. John Muir compares the Tulalala waterfall with another waterfall we can still visit in Yosemite Valley, and this waterfall we have already mentioned in the past in another screencast. It's the Yosemite Bridal Veil waterfall. Here we go, we are back to our map, and now we will continue exploring the mountains of California, and from El Capitan we will travel to Tulalala Falls. Alright, Tulalala Falls will be mostly full of water in June, according to the description. Again, the water falls right into this artificial lake, so you cannot stand here to enjoy the waterfall. However, we can Tulalala Falls. However, we can definitely look at the pictures. Alright, so Tulalala Falls is located on the north side of Hetch Hetchy Valley in Yosemite National Park. It's roughly 880 feet, and it's the smallest of the two large waterfalls that spill into Hetch Hetchy Reservoir. And the second waterfall we will talk about later, it's called the Wapama Fall. So let's take a look at Tulalala Falls, and let's appreciate this beautiful picture. Tulalala Falls, very airy, and remember there was a comparison with the Bridal Veil. The picture. Alright, so this is, I think we have already seen this picture, but I don't believe there is a waterfall here. So we're going to go back here. Beautiful Tulalala Falls. Okay, so from Tulalala Falls, we will fly back to Yosemite Valley. So we would like to compare Tulalala Falls to the Yosemite Bridal Veil. Over here, Bridal Veil Waterfall. This is one of the first waterfalls which is usually visible when you arrive to Yosemite National Park. And Bridal Veil viewpoint is right here, and as you can imagine, the observation point is at the floor of the valley, right? That's the only way to view it. And luckily, this valley isn't flooded. Here we are looking at the creek that actually gives rise to Bridal Veil, so the water is gonna like fall down over there, and the Yosemite Valley is below. So let us kind of rotate to the original view, and I also would like you to pay attention where the observation point is over there at the floor of the valley. Alright, and I can also try to drop my little person to the observation point if I could. Oh, there is multiple, I think, multiple spots. Okay, so let me try to drop the little person right there on the viewpoint. Alright, so let's see if we can actually locate the waterfall. Yeah, here we go. So we are standing at the floor of the valley at the observation point, and there are some tourists here as well, enjoying the Bridal Veil waterfall. Right there. And let's look at information on the Bridal Veil waterfall. Bridal Veil is one of the most prominent waterfalls in the Yosemite Valley in California. And here is a beautiful picture. Eerie, pure, innocent. This is Bridal Veil Creek that gives rise to the waterfall, and here is a sun illuminated picture absolutely beautiful. I hope you can appreciate the beauty of the waterfalls and the poetic description of them by John Muir, and I would like you to think about the value of the nature and the spiritual connection that we could establish with the nature. We will continue reading John Muir's book in the next screencast. So if you have any questions, you know how to get in touch with me, and I will see you soon.